Hi there, Ischa here, and welcome to this episode of The Higher Life, where I take concepts that are considered esoteric, spiritual, and new age, and show you how these can be practical tools that can really empower you along the modern spiritual path. And I'm going to add that because this work is really focused at guiding you along spirituality as it serves these modern conditions that we are in today. And this is such a key lesson, the one I'm teaching today, which is understanding that as a species, as a collective, we are moving from enmeshment to empowerment. It's giving context to the larger story of this spiritual path, that we are being guided to evolve and mature and develop our skill set as human beings to serve a particular outcome. And that is to move humanity away from a relational or relating to each other through this enmeshed engagement style and becoming truly empowered, where we relate to each other as unique and independent human beings, but completely in service of a vibrant global prosperity, a thriving collective. So our focus as unique beings is about serving global prosperity as opposed to personal prosperity, but the focus is also on celebrating and supporting our uniqueness as the enrichment that we bring to the world. So in our personal lives, we're focusing on developing our authenticity, first becoming aware of it and then cultivating it and then mastering it in service of a global prosperity. And we walk away from being so focused on generating personal prosperity, and that is usually personal wealth or a lifestyle that suits us personally, but actually compromises the well-being of the whole planet I'm talking about here. So we all want to live in a healthy set of conditions, in a thriving physical environment, and we need a planet that is thriving to do that. But we don't need to identify our uniqueness as how we save the planet. That is not what this work is about. That is from the old paradigm where recognition or worthiness was very much attached to contribution. So it was all about being a person of significance who contributes in a significant way to the whole is what makes you valuable and therefore worthy. And actually what we see is people contribute in ways that are very damaging to the whole and to the planet, and we celebrate them and what they do because they make money. They have a rich lifestyle, and we think that's what we want. So we have our GPS coordinates that are running the way that we use our energy in the world that are very dysfunctional and harmful, and very much we're very much in service maybe at the beginning of the old paradigm, the era of progress, but we're definitely growing out of now as we move into the era of potential. So enmeshment is not a bad thing, and empowerment is not a good thing. That's the first thing that I want to say here. Enmeshment is our most immature state. That is, when you're a baby, you're born into a family system. You don't have the mental capacity to identify as a separate self. That's normal. You're simply a sensory being, very open, very undefined, and everything that happens to you is through a sensory perception that has no interest at all in deciding who it is or coming to know who it is as a unique human being. So you're naturally playing out enmeshment, where your sense of self is undefined and is usually influenced by the family system that you're born into, or whatever system you're born into, wherever you are in the world and what was going on at that time. Now, the idea is that in those early phases, that's completely healthy to be enmeshed with your family. It helps you get nurtured and nourished to the point where your mind starts to be able to take on the concept of identification. That is, you start to realize through the way that everyone around you is engaging with you that you have a name, that you have a gender, that you have all these things that seemingly tell you that you are a human being who is unique or separate to other human beings. And that progressively gets stronger as you get into adolescence. And our bodies move in this direction. We're born vulnerable and fragile in little baby bodies. And as we as our bodies grow, they become stronger and more agile, and we have the physical capacity to separate from our families and become a unique identified self. So we identify as a unique human being, and this can go array. We can over-identify with an ego version of ourselves. That's the survival self. That's a different area. But really, our bodies move in this direction naturally, being very vulnerable, becoming more strong, and then later in our life becoming vulnerable again as our bodies age. But this vulnerability later in life is a more mature, if we are wise, relaxed vulnerability. We don't fear our vulnerability or need to be cared for in the same way we do towards the end of our life. But what happens with the psychology, the mind? The mind is not aware, I think, at this point in time, that it is supposed to facilitate the psychological maturation that matches our physical maturation. And actually what has happened is, or we just don't realize that it takes more time than your physical human life. So actually, as a species, as a collective, as an entity, we have been maturing psychologically from a very enmeshed mindset through to leading towards the empowered mindset that is coming our way. And we're somewhere in the middle, because we can see that there is a very adolescent psychology still playing out in the world in a collective sense. The adolescent being the one who needs to be seen as a independent person, who needs a lot of attention, who can be very self-centered, which is absolutely healthy at an adolescent period of life, but not healthy as an adult. And we see that we have a lot of that psychology playing out through adults, that they haven't matured beyond the me, I. Or if you're an adolescent that has grown up in a very strong we culture or collective culture, there hasn't been this sense of finding your own voice, and you've never had any capacity to really move away from that family system. You've remained enmeshed. So it's kind of this, some systems where the adolescent becomes almost a false over-empowered and ego-empowered. The ego gets very empowered in that adolescence, and they don't want to give up on it as they move into adulthood. Or you have these other collective cultures where the ego is very passive and hasn't had a chance to find any sense of uniqueness. It hasn't been able to fight for your uniqueness, and you actually just stay really enmeshed and infantile in some ways. Even though you're operating in the adult world, you're kind of, all your decisions and who you think you are and how you respond to life is based on what people will think or what the collective will think, or a fear of being kicked out of the collective, or, which I think is a much deeper fear, not having access to opportunities that the collective offers if you're the right profile. And oh my gosh, how do we all know that in the West, especially as women, I think, but men as well? This sense of, if I'm not in the game at the moment, manifesting, contributing, speaking up, being heard, being recognized, even my pace goes with how that feels, I'm going to miss out on prosperity because I'm not accessing the resources that everyone else is able to because they're in the game. And women who have to stay home, or anyone who has to stay home with children for years on end, that's a really fearful place to be sometimes, because that perceived reality of where everybody's making it and getting money and having access is moving so quickly. And you've got children to look after who move at a different pace and need different things which aren't valued or seen. And therefore you feel like you're missing out. But it's actually just a big delusion. There is no truth to that being a real reality. It's just a reality that our psychology creates and everybody agrees to, because we're still stunted and believing that our progress is what is going to create this global prosperity. If we're all rich on an individual level, then the world will do well. And we just know that this isn't working out, because when people pursue individual prosperity, they're less inclined to think about the negative impacts of their choices at a global level. And we see that everywhere. So we do really need to start with global prosperity being the larger driving force, and individual personal empowerment to serve that global prosperity as where we want to put our personal focus. And that, of course, is what this spiritual path is all about. It's about the synthesis of the unique I, individual, and the larger we, collective unfolding, which is from enmeshment to empowerment. So if every single human being is aware that they're moving out of enmeshment and the kind of engagement practices that enmeshment creates, such as people pleasing or avoidance or only being able to experience yourself as worthy through the eyes of the system that you're in, all of these things that really keep us small and unable to own our full power, then we will stay stuck in a system that is inherently serves inequality, and our environment will continue to degrade. And I guess eventually we'll just somehow self-sabotage to the point that nature will take care of it for us, and these forces will create a third entity or a new world that might not have us in it, or might have a different version of us than we can possibly imagine. And that is, in a way, bigger than us. But if you want direction in your life right now about the correct use of your energy, it is simply understand that as a larger entity, a human collective, we are moving out of enmeshment to empowerment. And all the resources and tools and insights and big awakenings or aha moments that you're seeing out there on TED TV, through meditation, through psychology, everywhere in business and economics, it's all speaking the same language, that we need to think differently about the way we relate to each other and what we think is important. And global prosperity needs to be our number one priority. And we are developing our inner capacity as human beings for compassion, for tolerance, for curiosity, for self-examination. All of these things, look for meditation to calm the mind and to see clearly. They're all helping us develop our inner capacity to actually achieve this. We're moving away from reactivity, something that is really primal in enmeshment, because in these family systems, we know the unique self can feel very threatened by the needs of the family or the tribe, and therefore get very reactive. And as you get older, you learn how to deal with this in a more mature way. So when you're on the path of personal empowerment, you're actually consciously supporting your psychology to mature through self-examination, through cultivating compassion, which therefore facilitates forgiveness. It's everything that you are getting taught along this path of modern spirituality. So I just really wanted to hone in on that today, to give you a really clear understanding that as a collective, there is a pathway that is unfolding. And if you see it, then you'll know that the focus of your life, really, the true purpose of your life, is to own your own authenticity and to empower it. That is all. The rest will take care of itself. So you don't need to go out there and save the world. Now, if that is part of your authentic path and you enjoy doing that, and it serves the world in a particular way where you feel that it's doing good, but it's really what your authenticity is seeking out, then do it. But I always say, imagine the world is perfect. It's taking care of itself. It's actually not asking that from you. What would you do with your time then? And I think most people realize that the drive to go out there and contribute and save the world is a distraction from something else, that they actually don't really know who they are, what their authenticity is or feels like, or what it wants, or how it wants to express itself. It's a whole new pathway, and it feels scary because you can't prove to anyone through this that you're worthy. It's so personal. You know, it won't maybe get you any recognition. It might not even pay the bills. So this is kind of an area where it's a bit unknown. We don't really know how the world is going to look once everybody aligns with this path. Perhaps we won't need to be out there working the way that we are now. One would hope so, because I think more and more people are understanding that they've lost their capacity to be at peace with themselves in life and to just truly enjoy being alive, that simplicity, that they are manically trying to find something in their life that gives them this sense of rightness, not realizing that the rightness is always there. It's our busyness that is creating the imbalance. It is this constant seeking that creates the turmoil. So if seeking simply becomes about seeking your own authenticity, everything will slow down and become a lot easier to manage, and you won't have this urgency and this incorrect use of energy burning out in the world looking for recognition. You know, when you are along this path for long enough and you follow these lessons for long enough, everything is supporting everything else. Every lesson that I bring here, the lesson before has spoken to the same things from a different part of the process, a different point in the journey. But I really wanted to have that clear, that enmeshment to empowerment is something we already go through physically, through the aging process of our life. We become more focused on certain things, whether it's our personal self or our tribal self, at different phases along that journey. And that's all natural. But what we're really looking for is the merging of the unique self and the whole system, the whole natural system, the whole universal system. And that is why I and the universe are the one thing. We want to merge as one, because that's all this journey has been intended for, is for you to know your own authenticity and to know that when it shines brightly, you've done your work for the whole. So I hope this has been helpful. Until next time, take care and love life.